Want to know something Anthem understood? Jetpacks are cool. That's a sentence I never thought I'd open a video with, and I'm pretty sure it might be one of the weirdest ones of this year, but hey, it's early, let's see. It's true though. I'm not sure if it's because they sit on that threshold of science fiction and science future, but they always have an appeal. Anthem understood this, and so too have many games succeeded off of the jetbacks of jetpacks. And now, 25 years after the original Outcast, a sequel straps on those jets and tries to soar to success while avoiding becoming a sci-fi Icarus. This is Outcast: A New Beginning. "25 years since the original Outcast released to the world, and now we're back with an open-world sequel from Appeal Studios. That's a team comprised of old faces who worked on the original, and some new people as well. We've seen the original in several forms since 1999. The name might ring a bell because in 2014 we had Outcast 1.1, and then Outcast Second Contact in 2017, which, despite the name sounding like a sequel, it was a remake of the original as well. A lot can happen in 25 years. The Matrix released back in 99, and so did Iron Giant. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater was there, Final Fantasy VIII, and Donkey Kong 64. Look, all I'm saying is that the sands of time are slowly eroding us all, and they're turning our memories against us. Anyway, Outcast: A New Beginning takes into account the fact that you may not have been born or played the original game. It's not expecting you to be up to speed on the lore and history of that game. If you've played Outcast, yeah, it's going to help. If you can remember it, it might even help a bit more. But don't worry, they've thought ahead. The protagonist has amnesia, so you're both going into this journey on a level playing field of discovery together. I normally feel like amnesia is a cheap trope when it comes to media, to be honest, especially sequels using it as a way to have the protagonist accidentally forget that they got to level 80 and unlocked everything. Outcast: A New Beginning using it though, I'll forgive. It's been a while, and it helps with the inevitable Google search of, do I need to play Outcast before playing Outcast: A New Beginning? It's a great way to level that playing field between you and Cutter Slade. Oh, that's right, we're playing the sequel to a 90s game, baby. And so the protagonist is going to have an exceptionally 90s name. Introducing Cutter Slade, a guy who's only spiked shoulder pads away from sounding like an X-Men character. 25 years is a long time between games, and there's a good amount of world building to go over. So, yeah, but have no fear, Appeal Games have thought of that as well. You've got a glossary that's incredibly handy and just one key press away that you can call up any time during conversations or during the game, because, being honest, there are a good number of words that you're going to have to try and remember. Okay, settle down. Class is in session. Today we're studying Adelpha law, and there's a good amount here to go over. Remember, today's lesson is going to be taught in Agakamon, which is English. We are looking at the planet Adelpha, and it is home to the Talan. They, of course, speak the language of Agazork, and yes, before anyone says, they do worship the Yods, or gods as we call them. They also listen to the Almael. She is their oracle. But what about you? Well, you are the Ulukai, the savior. And there are also other important terms that you need to know, such as the Golotai Guardians. They are the Guardians. There's also, of course, Helidium. That's a crystal that is an energy source. They have Shamars, who are their shamans and healers. When people die, they revert. And there is also the concept of Sankra, or chaos. And the most important word, of course, Gork. Gork means Gork. On we go. Look, I'll admit, it very much feels like hitting the ground running trying to catch up on all of that. It's like starting a new fantasy novel filled with names, places, and all that information you gotta try and get up on that first paragraph. And truth be told, it works. It helps flesh out the world in a way that feels organic and natural, like it was here before you. It's not, something that just kind of popped in when you did. Something that always amuses me is when I'm reading a sci-fi or fantasy novel and someone on another planet or in another world says, "What on earth?" It's small things like greetings and expressions that really help build out a believable world. And that's one of the things that sets Outcast apart back then. It yet again sets Outcast: A New Beginning apart this time around. This is an open world RPG that comes out swinging when it comes to story. It's not perfect and it does stumble in places, but the story is one of the strongest parts of this little RPG. Let's get into it. You, Cutter Slade, are the Ulukai. You are savior of the Talon people and all of Adelpha, as there are invaders from above looking to bring Sankra to this land. The overall story starts off looking pretty familiar. I mean, it's Space Imperialism 101. That's nothing new. Humans rock up to a planet and try to subjugate the people for one reason or another. How this plays out as a larger scale story is fine, but I personally think it wobbles towards the end. There's nothing wrong with the overall concept. Classics are a classic for a reason. It's gonna work. Look at Avatar. The true strength shines on the individual level of who we're interacting with on this journey. Those boots on the ground, the individuals. It doesn't matter if you're saving the world or dealing with a more personal quest of one person. If the characters you're dealing with are flat and boring or just simply knobs, then you're not going to enjoy your time in that world. And throughout my entire time in Outcast: A New Beginning, I don't think I met a single character that I hated that was based on poor writing, except maybe one of the main antagonists, and he felt more like a side character anyway. He just popped up now and then to either remind you that he was still around or to just do something evil to move the plot to the next beat. The whole human threat is integral to the story. It's intertwined in such a way that you can't really separate them. It would be like trying to pull apart a double helix. Everything's just going to collapse. At the same time, though, that part of the story that I wanted to spend more time with is the Talon homeworld and not the human threat. Both before and after the story takes place, I would love to see more of this world. Those individual Talons that you're interacting with, they start in interesting places, and guess what? They end in interesting places. I would love a sequel that just involves dealing with a more grounded problem that allows more discovery of this world rather than thrusting the problem of humanity into the mix. That feeling of connectedness and unity and everything being entwined, that interconnectivity, it's core to Outcast: A New Beginning. It's a heavy theme. The non-linear structure of the main quest shows it off, combined with some of the more intrinsic design choices that are going on here, mean that you're not only free to approach whichever main village quest you want to, at whatever time you feel like. It also means that you're going to see a world design that more modern games should try to emulate. The main quest is broken down into 7 main parts, one for each village, and then those are broken down into parts beyond that, each revolving around a different problem within that village. The village of Amir is deep within the southern jungle and has its own problems to focus on, compared to the mighty pillar village of Dasan in the northern desert. Yet those two villages, even though they're so far away, they're still connected. Villages on Adelpha each have their own unique specialities, from growing fruit to fishing to mining. Based on the environment surrounding the village they were built in different places for different reasons, it makes sense, it's logical, that's how we build cities. In video games, normally when you rock up to a new hub, you're dealing with local problems that have local solutions. Outcast: A New Beginning instead has this strong backbone of unity among the Talon people. You're dealing with local problems, but sometimes the solution isn't local. Villagers on Adelpha each have their own unique speciality, from growing fruit to fishing to mining. Based on the environment surrounding the village they were built in, different locations for different reasons. Making lampade requires the best fruit, which just so happens to come from Amir. If you need a food source, look no further than the fishing village of Sapper. Villages have their own strengths. They rely on the other villages for theirs. It's honestly crazy to see a sequel to a game from the 90s just turn up and show some of the other RPGs how to do world design and make everything feel like one true world rather than several areas that have just been stitched together to make a bigger tableau. That's not to say the non-linear structure works flawlessly. It does allow freedom, but it also reveals a looseness to the story. Several times during my playthrough, Cutter would come out with a voice line for something that hadn't happened yet, or would be having a discussion and he'd completely forget he'd already met the person being discussed. It's understandable. I mean, not every situation can be factored in, but it does feel like it harms the intention of creating that true non-linearity, but everything's connected and everyone knows everything else. It leaves you wondering if there's a correct order to run through things. Outcast: A New Beginning is at its finest when you're helping locals in the villages with personal quests and soaring around the environment on your jetpack and glider to facilitate those. Appeal Studios have nailed what enjoyable traversal feels like. Whether you're using the upgraded jetpack to speed along the ground, twisting and turning through tight pathways, or the glider to soar unabated across the skies, both tools are perfect. Several times throughout the game, I found myself traveling to the 2 highest villages and just using the glider to check areas of the map as I passed over them. At other points, I was just zipping around with the jetpack, collecting crafting materials. It understood how to correctly limit traversal skills while not frustrating. And I know that I'll be comparing games to Outcast: A New Beginning for a long while because of those 2 abilities. It's one of the most important parts of a game. You know, you're going to be traveling around, and when you're placed into an open world setting, there's a lot of world to explore. That traversal has to feel enjoyable. If traveling is tedium, then there is no desire to explore. You can spend a good amount of time in Outcast, wandering off from the main goal, simply to check out the sights and sounds of Adelpha. The standard affair of biomes is here to discover, from jungles to deserts, mountains to beaches, and everything in between. And Outcast: A New Beginning gives you the option of checking them out from the ground or the air. Both work. That tightness and speed of the jetpack allowing you to just dash around versus the direct approach of the glider that gives you a bird's eye view to find exactly what you're looking for. I would love to see more tucked away characters or little side quests to find in small areas of the world, but that isn't what this is meant to be. This isn't a giant 200-hour RPG, and I get that, and it's at this point that you're thinking, damn, Dave, you're really liking this game. That's a whole lot of praise you're giving it, and it's at this point that I make that yeah, but noise. There's some ideas here that I wish more games took advantage of. And then there's some that I just wonder why they didn't get as much attention. The quest design has a heavy reliance on that feeling of interconnectedness. Every single village quest is going to send you off to the other villages. And that starts off great, but when you know what's coming, when you know that every time you talk to someone, it's gonna happen, it becomes formulaic. Really, really predictable. You know that each step is going to either send you out to gather X or go visit Y. Sometimes it's even going to do both. But outside of the formulaic nature of that design, there's also a really weird reliance that borders close to obsession with escort quests. I've made my feelings on escort quests clear recently. Escort missions to me are that warm bag of salad you get with a takeaway. You didn't really ask for it and you'd rather it wasn't there. And I can tolerate them, but Outcast: A New Beginning has an abundance of them, and ranging from taking something for a walk because it's sad all the way to bringing back a prize sheep herder. What up, Scoot? This frustration is then only amplified when you realize that the game has a staggeringly low amount of enemy variation, and that's then only bolstered by the age-old idea of adding in colored variations of the same creatures and enemies. Instead of fighting blue droids, you advance to fighting red ones. Instead of regular Krakets, you're fighting fire Krakets. It feels there's a lost opportunity here. You could have expanded on the original game ideas. Yeah, we see the return of Krakets and Z-Dogs and Kamenai and Gamors, and there's a brief tussle with some Senectors, and that's fine for a game in the 90s, not a game from the 90s. I just feel that if I'm spending 20 hours in a world, the enemies I'm killing in the first 2 hours should vary from the enemies I'm killing in the last 2 hours. This lack of variation also doesn't enamor itself to side activities very well at all. The world is littered with side activities for you to do, but as the quests are carefully crafted and intertwined, unfortunately you're looking at a standard buffet of seemingly meaningless endeavors that at some point are going to boil down to completion for the sake of achievement. You can find shrines throughout the world to increase your health. They require following a spirit through a parkour trail. You can find Orim trails that want you to complete another parkour trail in exchange for some upgrade currency. There's a set of 4 larger versions of those shrines dedicated to each of the 4 essences: fire, earth, air, and water. And then there are 2 combat style activities: clearing outposts around the map, which gets you weapon upgrades, and clearing Gork growths for Gork. Those weapon upgrades from outposts I mentioned, they're important up to a point as well. Outcast A New Beginning doesn't have a plethora of weapons at your disposal. Instead, you have 2, a small pistol and a larger rifle. And instead, you customize how those weapons are going to work through upgrade modules that you find throughout the game, and you can slot into them. Initially, you're pretty limited on the options available and the slots you've unlocked, but towards the end of the game, you're going to have more variety in the modules you found and more of the slots on each weapon unlocked. At the start, I was just running around with a pistol with rapid fire. Towards the end of my time on Adelpha, I'd converted that pistol into my healing weapon. It didn't need to even worry about heating or ammo. It just worked. The rifle, that shifted throughout the game. It started life as a fast-firing assault rifle before evolving into a single-fire sniper that took 10 ammo per shot. It had a brief dance as a shotgun to test it out, before I then settled into its final form that got me through the rest of the game, which was I just made it utilize all the drone damage modules so that I could clear outposts faster. The world is also littered with crafting items to pick up, enabling you to craft potions to help you on your journey. And I'm going to be honest, this is the system that I used the least, simply because I didn't ever feel the need to use potions. I ran around, I crafted, I got the things, but the AI never really put me in a position where I faced enough of a challenge that I felt I needed that upper hand of, everything at my disposal has to be used. And I love a good crafting system. The idea of one is here, and you might end up crafting them if you need a helping hand. It's great to have the option, but this isn't World of Warcraft. You're not raiding. You're not going to be prepping up with buffs before you take on an outpost. And those are the sort of side activities and systems to dip your toe in while you're waiting for the main quest. Did I forget to mention the waiting for the main quests? Yeah, they have timers to come back to. Yep, timers are here. And this one isn't fully a bad thing. It ends up giving you a gentle nudge to either go tackle side activities during that downtime of waiting for Lampe to brew, or you venture off to another village to aid in their quests. There's that interconnectivity again, the backbone of the world of Adelpha, and it shows its strength. It's that backbone that kept it going throughout my playthrough for me. It's that backbone combined with a campaign that came in at just under a svelte 20 hours that made sure I didn't tire of Outcast. You see, to me, Outcast A New Beginning feels like the return to an era of AA RPGs. And I truly mean that as a compliment. It's not an insult. Yes, this game's not perfect. Yes, this game has jank and some outdated systems, but it has a core strong enough to hold them up just high enough. And look, throw out a sea of games that require you to invest over 100 hours or to log in daily for fear of missing something. There should be a cut-out little sanctuary for those shorter games. And that doesn't just have to be home to visual novels or 2D side-scrollers. there was a time when shorter RPGs were a great palate cleanser. They didn't overstay their welcome. They had their own quirks and janks that just added to their charm, and they were happy to just tell you a short story on your long, tired journey through new releases and clogged up backlogs of good intentions. They were a game that sat down next to you, smiling, asking if you've had a rough day, and they just wanted to give you enough depth, just enough systems to keep those dopamine trips coming, while not burdening you with the responsibility or the guilt of needing to put in 100 hours. And you know what? I'm okay with those sorts of games existing. I think they're great additions to everything else. And on top of that, I love the idea of sequels or remakes of old games from bygone eras. That's taking a game that consisted of cylinders stacked on cubes for a main character and turns them into the vision of what we remember in our heads that game looked like. Because you know what? Nostalgia is a powerful thing. And I mean, if we're looking back to the 90s for game ideas, 99, yeah, there's another one that I can think of.